I said in the email, oh yeah, I was recording it. As I said in the email, I started looking into breath work a couple of years ago. I read James Naster's book, Breathe. My brother actually gave it to me. And as I'm reading this thing, I'm just like, oh my God. Like I had no idea how much the breath actually kind of plays into this. And then it actually dawned on me that I had a conversation years ago, probably 15 years ago with Dana, who's here, with freediving and what the breathers do. And I remember talking to her. I remember this so clearly, having this conversation. And she was talking about when you do deep breath holds, long breath holds, your spleen will actually release red blood cells into your system. And of course, as the endurance athlete and watching Lance Armstrong and these guys blood dope constantly, I was like, oh my God, that's like free blood doping right there. Right. So like immediately was like, has anyone looked at this? Like what's the theory behind this? Like how long does that blood stay in our system and all this? And then I kind of just, I don't own a research lab, so there's no way I can actually research this. And I kind of just forgot about it, right? Like just, it pop up in my head every once in a while. And then I'm reading this book, seeing how just the act of breathing affects our structural features. It affects how we move. It affects everything, how we sleep, everything that we possibly do. So then, of course, the next question is like, all right, well, how do I get better at this? But not how do I get better at this from a stress perspective or sleeping better perspective. Like for me as an endurance athlete, as most of us are that are here, it was, how does this impact me as an athlete? There are so many, like as you start reading through this, there are so many different breathing techniques. You have Wim Hof, you have cyclical breath, you have yoga breathing, you have what freedivers would do in preparation, right? All these things have positive effects. They positively affect us in a different manner, right? It could be from a stress relief, it could be immunity relief. But as an athlete, I was like, well, how's this affecting me and my performance? Not just recovery, but how can I perform better? And as I looked and looked and looked, most of these were talking about just the biomechanics, like how to breathe. As I started looking deeper and deeper, I started finding out the information about the biochemical aspect of breathing, like what's really occurring. And the simple question that really came down to is like, why do we have the urge to breathe? Right? It's a subconscious thing. Like we just breathe. I don't have to think about breathing. But when I'm exercising or anything like that, or sometimes I get stressed, or Sarah just took a deep sigh, right? That deep inhale. Like why? What's that urge? Why is it? What forces us to want to breathe? Simple answer. Well, we need oxygen, idiot. Like if we don't have oxygen, we die. But most of us probably have a Garmin, or most of us have looked at our blood oxidation levels. And if anyone looks at theirs right now, it's probably 96%, 97%, 98%, right? If we went and visited Ina and Greg tomorrow and I got off the plane, it would not be 96%. I would get off the plane. I would have this hard time catching a breath. I'd be trying to take these more breaths. I'd start to hyperventilate or try to deep breathe. Why? Because my blood saturation of those red blood cells would dip. It would be down around 88%. And that would be a normal reason to want to breathe, right? My blood oxygen has gone down, so I need to breathe. But I'm in New York. I'm not at altitude. My blood level is 97% right now. So why do I feel the need to breathe even right now as I'm talking? It has nothing to do with the actual oxygen, is what we found, or what I found out. What it actually has to do with carbon dioxide. And it's your body's tolerance to the buildup of carbon dioxide in your system that forces us to breathe, that forces that urge to breathe. And when we hyperventilate, we breathe too much, or we talk like I am right now. Every time we're exhaling, we're getting rid of that carbon dioxide. And as I'm working, I'm building this carbon dioxide up and up and up and up. So as this carbon dioxide is building up, working out, talking, a little bit of stress, doing this, presenting in front of you guys, what that's doing is I'm getting this chemo sensors, like chemo reaction sensors are super sensitive. And they're like, hey, your carbon dioxide level is getting higher. You need to exhale. You need to get this gas out, right? So the urge to breathe is typically a sensitivity to carbon dioxide. It's not our want for oxygen. It's our want to get rid of carbon dioxide. And most of us learned growing up that carbon dioxide is a bad gas, right? We don't want carbon dioxide, but it's not true. You know, just like all of us grew up learning that it's hot outside, drink a lot of water, drink a lot of water, drink a lot of water. And hyponatremia is real from overhydration. That's an issue, right? So sometimes when we learn these things like carbon dioxide is a bad gas, we don't want this, but that's not the case. Carbon dioxide is the catalyst for oxygen to actually get into our cells. Why is our blood saturation 97% and I'm out of breath? That's not a lack of oxygen. My blood's saturated, 97% of my red blood cells have oxygen connected to them. And here I am out of breath. Doesn't make any sense because I'm talking too much. I'm getting rid of too much carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is what actually releases that oxygen from the red blood cells that my muscles can actually use it. So what's limiting us a lot of times in activity or this breathlessness that we have is not the lack of oxygen. It's that we are too sensitive to carbon dioxide. Let's think about VO2 max for a moment. All right, most of us have tested our VO2 max in some sort of crazy, treadmill test or rower or on the bike. And VO2 max is measuring how much oxygen can you use at a given time. I'm not very good. My VO2 max is not that strong, right? So my body doesn't use a lot of oxygen at a given time. Someone like Usain Bolt or Jan Frodeno or these top athletes, their VO2 max, or you talk about Lance Armstrong, right? Their VO2 maxes are way up in those 70s. And that's because they're actually able to use the oxygen that's in their system. We used to always think of it, or I always used to think of it as like, oh, the more muscles I use, cross-country skiers, stuff like that, they're going to have a higher VO2 max because they're using more oxygen to just do their sport. But it's actually that they have a higher tolerance to CO2, right? Think of it like a bucket. Your bucket gets full of CO2 and your head explodes. It doesn't really happen like that, but let's just say gets up to, full bucket, boof, your head blows up. All right. So we're hanging out maybe in this like middle of the bucket area. We start working out, our muscles start using energy. One of the byproducts is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide starts to fill and fill and fill. Well, at some point in time, we have that sensor in our head that's starting to blink. So for me, say I'm at 50, my bucket's halfway full. Once I get to 60% full, man, this light's going off. Empty the bucket, empty the bucket, empty the bucket. My head's gonna blow up. My head's gonna blow up, right? But then you have these other athletes, these high VO2 max athletes. Their bucket might be up to 80% before their alarm starts going off. So can we improve our VO2 max? Like, what are you doing to improve your VO2 max during your runs, during your bike, during your workouts? What we're doing is we're working at a super hard effort, producing a lot of carbon dioxide and trying to build a tolerance to this carbon dioxide, learning to handle that carbon dioxide. Ronnie and I were doing our workout today, 30 seconds, all out effort, 15 seconds recovery, 30 seconds, all out effort, 15 seconds recovery. Like, oh man, she was tolerant. I wasn't doing it. She was tolerating carbon dioxide like crazy for an hour, right? Or for that 7-minute block. Breath work can have us do this all day long. So the goal of an athlete is literally, this is what we're doing in our training for 10, 15 hours a week, is we're trying to improve how our circulatory system works, how our gas exchange works. Well, breathing simply does that. The other added benefits are other gases. Like think about, you might read beet juice I'm sure Don is drinking beet juice. There's no way Don is not taking beet supplement, right? He's trying to get every minimal gain he can possibly get, right? So the reason you take beet juice or those pills, red alert pills, is because in beets there's nitrous oxide, nitric oxide, not nitrous, nitric oxide. Nitric oxide dilates as a vasodilator. It helps dilate and absorb oxygen into the system and circulation. Well, nitric oxide, free if you breathe through your nose. You literally have glands in your nose that are producing nitric oxide on a regular basis. So you don't have to drink the beet juice. You still can, but you can also get it simply by breathing in through your nose. Bicarbonate is another one, right? People are drinking baking soda because it helps us actually do repeated hard efforts, helps buffer the acid in our blood when it becomes acidic through lactic acid and burning energy. Well, CO2 also helps with that buffer by creating bicarbonate. Breathing exercise can help EPO. You can take that like Lance did with a needle to build more red blood cells. There's so many things that we can get from this, right? It's all biomechanical. And for me, that was the difference between that. I wasn't getting these Wim Hof. Like Wim Hof, great. It's a great form of breathing. But when you look at Wim Hof, what they're doing is hyperventilation, right? You do these repetitive hyperventilations, then hold your breath, hyperventilate, then hold your breath. Hyperventilation, when we breathe too much, what are we doing? We're releasing carbon dioxide. We're lowering our bucket. So I'm taking my 50 and I'm lowering it down to 30. So when I hold my breath and that carbon dioxide starts to build up, well, I'm already down at 30, right? So now I can hold it for a longer period of time. So that breathing technique is a great technique, but it's not a great technique for endurance athletes. Because endurance athletes we don't want to lower our carbon dioxide. We want to build a higher tolerance to carbon dioxide. So the exercises we want to do want to be hypoxic and hypercapnic. And what that means is hypoxic is low oxygen, like living in Colorado, and hypercapnic, which is increasing our carbon dioxide. So we get this sense of hunger, right? We get that alarm bell going off. Because when we get that alarm bell going off on a regular basis, it's constantly going off, like the car alarm that's going off out in the street most of the day. Do you even recognize it anymore? No. And that's what training is. That's why you do those 30-second hard intervals and 15-second intervals, is so your body gets used to that stressor. Because once a body gets used to a stressor, it's no longer a stressor. It's just part of your life. And that's why people plateau in their fitness. They do the same thing all the time. So what we need to do as endurance athletes is challenge our body to get a higher tolerance to CO2. We do that through training, and we can do that through breathing, sitting at your desk multiple times throughout the day. And you'll get the other benefits of lower stress and better sleep and all this stuff as well. But that was the thing that brought me to Oxygen Advantage, this kind of technique and these exercises, because it spoke to me as an endurance athlete, and this makes sense to me. So what we're going to talk about today is one we already talked about, is the biochemical aspect of why it is we breathe and what blood saturation and how we use oxygen and the benefits we get from that. The next thing we're going to talk about is biomechanics. How do you breathe? And this is day to day. This is when you're sleeping, when you're walking, talking, well, not talking because that would be hard, but sitting around watching me talk, is breathing through the nose. If there's one thing you take away from this 90 minutes today, is just shut your mouth. Breathe through your nose all the time. Whenever possible, breathe through your nose. All right, sitting at your desk, breathe through your nose. If you're out for a jog, run, workout, anything, try to breathe through your nose. And all of us are going to be like, you're nuts. You cannot breathe through your nose during the workouts. There's no way Ronnie could breathe through her nose today during this workout. Absolutely not. Right? We're at VO2 max efforts. There's no way you're going to sustain it. But research has shown that people can sustain breathing through their nose up to 85% of their maximal effort, their VO2. All right, our 10K pace, our FTP is typically around 88% of your VO2. So that means you can be well into zone 4. For some of us, most of us, that's like a 10K. For some of us on the call, that's more like a half marathon because they're really fast, right? But like your 10K, like your 1 hour running pace, your 1 hour hard biking pace, like all out bike effort for 1 hour, you can do almost with your nose closed or your mouth closed, right? Just breathing through your nose. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, I'm breathing through my nose half the day and I feel like I'm out of breath, right? We need to train for this. So there was a study done, and I just want to get it right. It was done in 2019. They took 10 amateur, so it's only 10 people, but small, right? But they took 10 amateur triathletes. They tested them breathing normally, how they wanted to breathe through their mouth, and they took them through a graded exercise test for performance. Then they had these athletes, 5 males, 5 females, train breathing through their nose for 6 months. All right, so they just trained, learned how to adapt to it. They learned how to breathe through their nose, brought them back in, did the graded test again. Here are a couple of the things that they found out from the conclusion. All participants were able to perform the same peak work and maximal oxygen consumption through nasal breathing. So they were able to do the same exact work, same maximal efforts through nasal breathing, mouth taped shut. So they're not even sneaking a little, they're literally taped. All right. Results were similar to the peak workout performance of mouth breathing. So that's saying the same thing. They were able to achieve adequate oxygen at a work rate as high as that of oral breathing. This most likely due to showing breathing result in a larger time of CO2 diffusion in the lungs. So the lungs, by nose breathing, the air stays in our lungs longer, allowing more gas exchange to occur. Right? If you're mouth breathing, we're all panting, that air is going in and out so fast. How much time does it have to actually absorb into the lungs, into the blood system? Not very long, right? Think about those high school days when you and Bill Clinton were not inhaling. The idea was to inhale and hold, right? Because as we leave that in there, it actually absorbs better into our system, right? We have more opportunity instead of just blowing it right back out. It's the same process here. Now, here was the big one that I thought. They had a 22% reduction in ventilation. So they were breathing 22% less and doing exactly the same amount of work. I don't know about you, but I would love to breathe 22% less when I'm running at my 10K pace. I mean, that you can't argue with that. That's reduction of work with breathing. That's economy. You are more economical breathing through your nose. All right. There was also another study that showed that 85%. There was another study too that I thought was really interesting with rugby players. And this would fall more into kind of like sprint sports or like even cycling, crit racing and stuff like that. Is they had one group of rugby players just doing their normal sprint routines. And they had one group of rugby players doing their sprint routines with their mouth shut, just through their nose. And over a period of, I think it was 6 months as well, they had their maximal. So before they did it, they were able to do 9 repeat sprints. They came back, the group with mouth breathing increased their sprints, but I think it was like 2. So they went up to like 10 or 11 sprints, if I remember off the top of my head. And the nose breathers increased their sprint repetition up to 14. Simply by just doing some breathing exercises and doing their sprints with their mouth shut. So they were actually be able to recover faster in between those sprints to repeat that sprint again. So as a bike racer or crit racer, I'm sprinting every 30 seconds. Would totally help Ronnie today. All right. So breathing through the nose is huge. Just the gas exchange that we get and everything there. The other part of breathing through the nose is it allows us to actually breathe deep. Deep breathing, when you say that, most people think of a big breath, Taking a big breath in, but typically we do that in the upper part of our chest. Deep breathing means to get low, to get that breath low. And when you breathe through your nose, go ahead and just do it. Take a deep breath in through your nose. You are going to fill up the lower portion of your lungs first, which is also going to help circulation because circulation is pulling towards the bottom of our lungs. So as we breathe that way, it's going to start to circulate that blood back up through the lungs as well, mixing it better, allowing more oxygen to come through. Your nasal breathing allows to warm the air, right? So that's a little bit better for us. There's a filtration center there as well. So we filter cleaner air, oxygen going through. The volume is greater because it's deeper, longer, slower. So all that happens. And really the amount, it comes down to the amount, right? We get more air in through our nose than we do our mouth, period. It's hard to believe, I know, because I didn't believe it at first either. But through practice, you'll start to realize that you are getting actually more oxygen in through that space than you are just simply taking in a deep breath, filling up the top of your lungs, and then throwing it right back out again. So the biomechanics of breathing is super important. Now, do I think about this when I'm working out or racing? No, I don't. Oh, working out maybe, but racing, absolutely not. In a racing atmosphere, I'm not thinking about anything other than what I'm doing at that moment, which is trying not to fall off my bike and just going hard. But that's the point of training. That's the point of doing it every single day in your day-to-day life. If I expect to do something in a race, I need to drill it all day long. Why do you do swimming drills? Why do you do running drills before you go for a run in your warm-up? You're doing drills to ingrain that motor pattern into your body so it becomes habitual. So when the shit hits the fan, you don't have to think about what you're doing, you just do. So doing your daily breathing exercises, learning to breathe from your diaphragm, taking a deep breath down is going to come to fruition when the shit hits the fan during the race. If you're not practicing it every single day, you can't expect it to be there when you need it. That's why the biomechanics of breathing is so important day to day, doing your 5 or 10 minutes every single day of how you breathe, slow, low, through the nose. Sleeping, got to do it. All right, your recovery, everything is going to be 10 times better breathing through your nose. How do I do that? I'm sleeping. I don't know if my mouth is open or not. You don't know if you're a mouth breather. If you wake up with a dry mouth, you're definitely a mouth breather while you're sleeping. All right, that's why it dries out. Now, you can tape your mouth shut when you're sleeping. Sounds weird. It is a little bit weird. I haven't done it yet because I'm not a mouth breather when I sleep, luckily. But there literally is this tape. It's called myotape. It's K-tape for the most part. So it's a stretchy tape that has a little hole cut out in the middle, and you put it around your mouth, and it'll hold your mouth shut. So you can still open your mouth, right? If you're like, oh my God, I can't breathe, you can still open your mouth because it's not actually covering it. I'll send out a link to it, Don, just so you have it. Myotape, it's great. I've actually used it, funny enough, during a workout. I haven't used it sleeping because, like I said, I don't have a problem with it. But during my workouts, during easy warm-ups or easy rides, zone 2, zone 3, even, I like to keep my mouth shut. So the myotape helps me do that. The reason I use the myotape occasionally is because back in November, October, I was all into this. So I was like, I'm going to keep my mouth shut during a run multiple times. And I did it for about 2.5 hours. And I gave myself TMJ. My jaw was completely locked up for a month, leading into Ironman, Arizona. It was not the smart idea, but you know, hey, we live and learn. So myotape can help with that sleep. Guarantee it's going to improve your REM, guarantee it's going to improve just your quality of sleep overall and your HRV, which is what we're all tracking with our whoops and Oura rings and all that stuff. All right. So biomechanically, we're going to do some exercises in a little bit to kind of work on that. But biomechanically, it's got to be through your nose. Inhale and exhale. It's got to be through the lower portion, your diaphragm. Just taking that deep breath in, letting those lower ribs expand, and then easy, passive breath back out. All right. And like I said, we'll do some exercises to walk through that, but practicing that day to day, it does benefit in a race. I notice myself in a race, even when I'm mouth breathing, because the effort's hard or after that hard climb, I will mouth breathe, but I'll still be breathing from the lower portion. I'll still mouth breathe, but I will still feel my lower ribs expand. I'm still getting a deep breath, even though it's coming through the mouth. You're not limited to just breathing upper chest from the mouth, as long as you're still practicing the diaphragmatic breathing. And then the last part of this really is cadence. How fast do we breathe? And cadence is really more about our HRV. All right. And our HRV, for some of you that might not be looking at this, is our automatic nervous system, essentially, your fight or flight, rest and relax response. If you have a Whoop band, your Garmin, or Ring, most of these things now are tracking HRV. And what HRV is, if you don't know, is it's heart rate based. And we all understand our pulse. How many seconds does, how many beats per minute are we doing? HRV is essentially measuring the time between those beats. So just because, our heart beats 60 times per minute does not mean it's beating once every second. It might beat, boom, 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 right? We all understand that kind of pattern, that heartbeat pattern. And what that is essentially your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic. Your fight and flight, sympathetic, right? Like, oh my God, saber-toothed tiger, I'm freaking out. My heart rate starts going crazy. And then my parasympathetic. Oh, Brian's voice is so smoothing, so calming. And we get that nice relaxed feeling, right? So that kind of rest and relaxation type thing, that's tied directly to our breath. And we can all do this right now. Find your pulse. So your pulse is directed to your breathing. It's connected. So as you inhale, your pulse will increase. So just take a nice nose breath, nice deep breath for like 3 or 4 seconds. Feel your pulse. And now just exhale through your nose for like 4, 5, 6 seconds. And you'll feel that space get bigger and bigger in between them. So HRV, what we're really measuring is this rate. What's that spacing between them? That when we have a high HRV or HRV is improving, it's basically showing that your parasympathetic and your sympathetic, these two sides of your nervous system, are working well together. When that space is decreasing, that means they're not working very well together. If I'm in a state of stress all the time, during a workout, that's a state of stress. My heartbeat's constantly going pretty fast. So the variability between those two is not very high. Throughout my day, I should have periods where I'm stressed like this, and I should have periods when I'm relaxed, sitting, drinking my coffee, reading the newspaper, right? Petting my dog, who's so enjoyable, not, right? All these things kind of affect our stress level throughout the day. It's how does our system respond to those? That's what HRV is really checking. And we're not just trying to get a high HRV number, right? It's not just about that. Right? We don't want to be living in a world of parasympathetic, right? We don't want this total relaxation all the time. That's not good for our body. We want a working balance between these two. So most athletes are tracking this, and we all understand how alcohol affects it, right? We've all done that with the Whoop band. We're like, oh, I had 3 drinks, my HRV plummeted, and I feel like crap the next day. Oh, I had 2 drinks, it wasn't that bad. So that's my limit, 2 drinks. Right? I would say try 0 because that's probably going to be better. But we all track it. We understand that sleep affects it. But how do we affect our sleep? Right? We understand this number. We want to get better, but no one's ever told us how to actually positively affect it aside from not drinking. That's basically what it boils down to. Right? We can't affect our sleep just because we want to affect it. We have to put things in place to affect our sleep positively. Breathing, mouth, nose breathing, these things will affect it positively. Not looking at your phone before bed affects it positively. But how we breathe day to day and going through some of these exercises can positively or negatively affect our nervous system. And there's certain exercises that we do in the program that are there to heighten it, to actually get that fight or flight, to get kind of jazzed up. Maybe that's what you want to do before you give a presentation at your office, right? Or before a race. I don't want to be super calm and lethargic on a start line of a race. That's the last thing I want, right? I want to be a little jazzed up, right? We used to take those sniffing salts and all that stuff to get like, oh, woo, let's go, right? But you can do it through breathing exercises that will excite the system as well. And then the cadence is really all about that, right? Just kind of getting that system there. So that's a lot of talking. I kind of felt like I threw a whole bunch out there. So let's kind of go through just a couple basic breathing exercises. And these are little, like this is stuff, well, first, actually, before we do that, we have to do the Bolt test. All right, and then what the Bolt test is blood oxygen level test is what it stands for. And this is basically a number that's going to let you kind of know where you are on the spectrum of that reaction to carbon dioxide. What's your tolerance like? All right, and it basically ranges from 0, and a high number's 40 seconds. Right, once you get up to like 40 seconds, you're like, I don't know, I guess a monk or something. I don't know, yoga master, right? You're definitely up there. All right, and what I'm going to say is this test has nothing to do with your physical capability. I don't care how fit you are. It has 0 impact on this test, 0, right? Because it was eye-opening for me the first time I took it. I was like, I just rode my bike like 175 miles and my score is what? All right, so I'm not going to tell you what a good score is, what a bad score is, because we're going to test it. And I don't want you thinking about what a good or bad score is, because you guys are all high performers and super willpower. So what the test is, and you guys can kind of walk through this with me a little bit before we actually test it out, is I just want you to sit there calmly, breathing in through your nose, out through your nose, and just nice and calm. Don't try to do anything. Just inhale, exhale through your nose. What's nice and good. What we're going to ultimately do is we're going to repeat that process a little bit, and then we're going to inhale, and then we're going to exhale through our nose. You're going to pinch your nose and hold your breath after the exhale. And then we're just going to count the seconds. How long do you hold your breath until you get the first definitive feeling that you want to breathe? It might be your neck going a little bit, maybe the diaphragm gives a little bit of kick, or you're just like, I would like to breathe in right now. Let go of your nose, and we're going to see what those seconds are. 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 40 seconds, who knows? All right, but this is not a willpower game. This is not how long can I hold my breath. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to find out when that light starts flashing in your head. This is the same thing as like a VO2 or a lactate threshold test running or something like that. If you falsify your number because you want it to be high, then your training program is crap. If you're not honest where you are, you're never going to improve, because you're going to be working way too hard and you're not going to get the benefits that you need. So this is a private number for you and yourself. I've never told anybody my Bolt score because no one's asked. All right. Sarah does not care. All right. So we're going to do this. We're going to do it twice. All right. Just because.
Can you be a little bit more specific about the feeling of needing? Because I mean, I stopped breathing, and then a second later, I feel like, oh, I could use a breath now.
Yeah.
But I could also wait a little bit. So what's, it's kind of a subjective thing.
Yeah, that's why it is objective. That's the hard part about this, right? It is a little bit of objective. But the good news, Chris, is you're the objective one, and you're the one taking the test every time. Okay, so if you're a little early on it, okay. If you're a little late on it, that's probably not great. It's kind of like FTP. You're better underestimating it than you are overestimating it, and you'll get better at getting that sense. But what I would say is it's a pretty definitive feeling that you want to breathe. All right, not just like I'd like to take a breath right now. It's like, okay, like you'll feel that diaphragm kind of kick a little bit, or like something in your throat kind of kick a little bit. When you feel that, that's a pretty good sign.
Right before you pass out, Chris.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't pass out. All right. That's a Wim Hof thing. We'll talk about passing out. All right. So what I'd say is if you have your phone with you or a stopwatch with you, something that's easy to kind of hit, because all of us are going to be a little bit different about when we're going to do it. I can't take the time for everybody. All right. So just kind of get your stopwatch out, start breathing into your nose, out through your nose a couple times, and I'll kind of count you down a little bit to when we're going to do it. Okay. So nice, easy breath in, out through your nose. Another breath in, out through your nose. On the next cycle for you, easy breath in, breath out through your nose, pinch your nose, and count. Try to relax. Once you feel that urge to breathe, just let go of your nose, inhale through your nose, and repeat nice, easy, calm breath. It should not be hard to breathe afterwards. You should be able to resume breathing pretty easily. If you feel like you're kind of losing your breath or hard to breathe directly after, you probably went a little too long. Should be a pretty easy, normal breath right afterwards. All right, so that's the bolt test. We've all done it once. We're going to do it one more time just to kind of go through this to kind of get a feel for it again. Okay. So just kind of compare your two numbers for the most part. I try not to look at my watch, the timer, because in my head, I have a number that I want to hit, right? So I try to do it without looking at the clock itself. Okay. So again, just resume back to normal, breathing through the nose in and out. Do a couple breaths when you're ready. You feel ready. Exhale. Pinch the nose, hold the breath, relax. All right, great. So the general rule, according to them, is if you're under 25 seconds, you have dysfunctional breathing. You're typically hyperventilating on a day-to-day basis. You're breathing too much. You have a pretty low sensitivity. Above 25, you probably have functional breathing, meaning that your breath rate day to day is probably, around 9 seconds, 10 seconds per minute, or breaths per minute. So like 9 to 10 breaths per minute is probably your normal kind of breathing rate. All right. When I first did this test, my Bolt score was 14, 15. I was like, I am dysfunctional. All right. I'm still only about around 20, and I work on it on a regular basis. All right. I have a very low tolerance to CO2. Has nothing to do with my physical capabilities of me being an athlete, just how well can I hold my breath and my tolerance to that. All right. So what we're going to do now is a couple different exercises. Now, your Bolt score helps you kind of predict how long you should be able to do certain things, like how hard you should be able to hold your breath and things like that nature. But if you're in that mid-teens, don't feel bad, right? You're probably about where most people are, right? But the idea is to get this number higher and higher and higher. Because if you could sit there after a normal breath, exhale, hold your breath and hold it for 40 seconds before you even have the urge to breathe, and then let go and breathe normal, that's amazing. That's 3 times longer than I can hold my breath. And Sarah and I were in Puerto Rico a couple of weeks ago surfing, and we're with these professional surfers, big wave surfer, and he did a breathwork class. And it was amazing. And watching these guys hold their breath, because that's what they have to do. Right? They go under these waves, they're holding their breath for a minute and plus, right? It's really amazing. I was like, I'm like, okay, when you guys gonna stop? Like I'd stopped holding, like I could have done 3 breath holds in the time that these guys were doing one. It was freaky, right? But I could outrun them any day. Like, let's run to the next town over 20 miles. Yeah, sure, let's go. They would never done it, right? So it's not an indictment of that. It's really just what is that tolerance level like? All right. So here's a couple exercises that you can start doing pretty much tomorrow. All right, to kind of get this. The first one is just a
Hey,
simple.
before we do that, just
Yeah.
quick question, Brian. I get a breaths per minute on my watch, like it measures it. Is that proxy for this at all? Or, I mean, it gives me
It's
my average breaths per minute. Is that something to look at over and to
for
look at
sure,
over time as part of this? Okay.
for sure, absolutely. You want to see that number go down. All right, that number should live honestly someplace between 9 and 14. All right, that's what I would say. Most athletes are going to be most likely in that number area. The golden number of where you should be, what's the ideal number of breaths per minute, is somewhere between 5.5 and 6.5 breaths per minute. That is ideal. That is ideal for your HRV, for your nervous system, because you have this thing that's called a baroreflex, which essentially is, it affects your blood pressure. And that takes about 5 seconds to kick in. And during our exhale is when our blood pressure will start to relax a little bit. And so that having a good, at least 5 seconds, and we're going to do something that's cadenced to that same number. That's 4 to 10 seconds essentially per breath. It helps us relax. It helps that automatic nervous system to kind of really work well. So you should see that go down. When I started these, I was probably around 14, 15 breaths per minute on average. I'm usually around 13 now, like in my daytime. At night, I'm usually around 10. The Garmin will give you waking and sleeping rates per minute, which is nice, right? So it shows me at night, like I'm breathing much better at night than I am during the day, but I'm also talking all day long. So that affects it drastically. Okay. All right. So the first exercise we're going to do, this exercise is a kind of a warm up. It's a small breath hold exercise. It's just to give us a light feel of hunger. So most of these exercises that we're doing are right now not about limiting our oxygen. It's not about dropping our oxygen saturation. All right. There are workouts that do that, which are down the road when your Volt score is high, where it's about breath holding, which will help lower, take that oxygen saturation from 96% down to below 88%, typically between 80 and 88%. So you can start getting some of those red blood cells and stuff like that kind of release, and just that kind of altitude adaptations that we're looking for, that we can go, visit people in Colorado. Wim Hof, just as a side note, they'll get that blood oxygen down to around 50%. Once you get below 60% blood oxygen level, you got a pretty high chance you're going to pass out, right? And there's really no great benefit for us as athletes, especially for us to go below 80%, maybe a high 70s, but after that, it's not really beneficial to us. We're getting the response from our body that we need as far as, EPO, building more red blood cells and stuff like that, because we're never in a situation where we're at a lack of oxygen as athletes, right? We have plenty of oxygen to breathe around us. Swimmers, a little bit more because they hold their breath, right? So that's hypercapnic. So and that's why swimming is so beneficial for us. Like, I'm a better athlete when I swim because it's breath holding. You're holding your breath while being active, right? That's what we're going to be practicing now. So this first exercise is just a small breath hold. What you're going to do is just start breathing through your nose, just a normal breath in, normal breath out. I'm going to set my timer so we don't do this for more than like 2 minutes or so. So normal breath in, normal breath out through your nose. And then what we're going to do is, on your exhale, I just want you to pinch your nose and hold your nose for 5 seconds. All right. So I'll walk you through it. Let's just take a normal breath in, normal breath out, pinch your nose, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your nose. Resume breathing through your nose for about 2 to 3 breaths. And once you let go of that pinch, make sure you inhale, because we want to take that nitric oxide that's in there, that's pooling, and throw it down into our system. So let's inhale through our nose, exhale, pinch and hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale through the nose, exhale, just breathe normally in and out through your nose. In through the nose, out through the nose, pinch, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, inhale through the nose, exhale, resume breathing. One more time, or a couple more times. In through the nose, out through the nose, pinch and hold. 4, 3, 2, 1. In through the nose, out through the nose, 2 or 3 more breaths. In through the nose, out through the nose, pinch and hold. 4, 3, 2, 1. Resume breathing. Let's do it one more time. So when you're ready, in through the nose, out through the nose, pinch and hold. 4, 3, 2, 1, and just relax breathing through your nose. All right, so this is just a quick little warm up. You might have started to feel a little bit of that light air hunger, right? And that's what we're looking for, is just a light air hunger. It's just a little bit that's like, man, I would like to breathe a little bit more, right? Because what we're doing is we're just trying to get that tolerance to go up a little bit. If you're doing these exercises, any exercise that we do today, and you start to get too much of an air hunger, you want to take that deep breath in, or like a sigh, just take a 20 or 30-second break, right? Just kind of get back to normal breathing through your nose, and then resume the exercise. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is light breathing. And this is more about the biochemical aspect of it, right? So this is trying to work on that gas exchange. This is the first exercise that we're going to do that's really going to give you this kind of air hunger feel. And if it does get too strong, like I said, just kind of breathe normally. Try not to sigh. Try not to take a deep breath, inhale and exhale, because when you do that, especially that exhale, you're getting rid of a ton of carbon dioxide. And what we're trying to do is keep this carbon dioxide in our system right now. All right. That's the purpose of this next one, the biochemical, right? So we want that carbon dioxide. So this is just a breathe light one. What this is just start breathing right now through your nose and then out. And I just want you to kind of pay attention to your breath. It's also meditative, right? I want you to feel the cold air coming in through your nose. And on your exhale, nice and easy, passive exhale, I want you to feel the warmer air coming out of your nose. And just pay attention to how that feels. Inhale coming in, that cold air. Exhale coming out, warmer air. And now what I want you to do is I want you to make it lighter. I want you to feel less coming in. Imagine there was a feather underneath your nose, and you don't want the feather to move. You don't want to disturb the small hairs in your nose. So just a light breath in, and try to lighten it even lighter than you're doing right now. Don't worry about how deep. Don't worry about the timing of it. Just a light air barely moving in, barely moving out. Just try to lighten it a little bit more. You should feel a light hunger. You should want to take a deeper breath. Just relax into it. Feel that light air coming in. Very little air coming back out. Nice and soft. If you don't have that light hunger, try to soften it even more. Couple more times. Super soft breath in. Very light breath back out. Very passive. Just letting the air flow out easily. And relax. So this is just trying to get that air hunger, right? Lightening that breath. It's not about how fast you're doing it. It's not about hard. It's just about how light can I get this air in? How smoothly, quietly, softly can I breathe? The next one is biomechanics. All right, so it's breathing biomechanics. This is about not how soft you're breathing. This is just a function of like, how should it feel? So just sit up straight, or if you're lying down, you can lie down, but sit up straight. And what you're going to do is just put your hands right on your lower two ribs. And we're going to breathe through our nose, as we always do. And all we're doing here is we're just practicing breathing deep, trying to get our diaphragm to drop, trying to get our lungs to, our ribs to expand outwards. So just taking like a straw, drinking from a straw through your nose, just a deep breath in. You should feel your bottom two ribs kind of expand out on the inhale. And as you exhale, you should feel those bottom two ribs just come back in. This is not about pushing your stomach out. It's just about breathing deep and seeing if we can get that expansion going laterally. Just to feel those ribs open up. And then exhale through your nose. Feel those ribs coming back together. Deep breath in. Feel those ribs expand out. Breathe back out. Feel those ribs come back in together. Nice deep breath back in. Feel them expand. Try to relax at the top of that breath. Just sit in it for a second. And then expand. Exhale out. Allow them to come back in. There'll probably be a natural pause at the end of that breath. And then right back in again. Trying to fill those lungs up from the bottom first. And as you breathe deeper and deeper, your chest may rise up as well. We are going to fill up those upper lungs at some point in time as well. The key is that the bottom expands first. And as you breathe out, as you get to that end point, the bottom of those are going to expand back together or contract back together. So one more time around. Deep breath in. Feel those ribs expand. Maybe the chest starts to expand afterwards. Sit in that for a second. And then just easy passive breath out through the nose, feeling those ribs kind of collapse all the way back in. So that's the biomechanics. That's the important part, right? That's the part that day to day, like this is one I do every single day. The breathe light one, I hate it. I struggle with it, right? Because it's that air hunger. I'm just like, oh, I hate this, right? This one I love because there's no air hunger, right? This is just biomechanical of just getting this to expand and go. And I like I said, this weekend, climbing those hills, getting to the top, like I was out of breath, but I could feel my ribs expanding. And this was actually one that they did at that surf breath workshop too. They did a really cool one, which I thought was great. We do a version of this, but this was great. They actually like put their hands, they balled up their hands like right at the bottom of the ribs and folded over as if they were laying on a surfboard, right? So they were contracting the front. So when they would breathe in, their back would expand. So when you're lying down like on a surfboard and your stomach can't expand, right? And it's got to go someplace. So they were getting it to get to their lower ribs and their back to actually expand. So that's also great, right? The more volume we can get in there, the better. So the more that all this expands is better. And I was thinking about this the other day too, is one of the reasons that we are so short on breath and that we breathe from our chest, yes, our mouth, but let's face it, all summer long, we are all walking around with our stomach held in, right? Like I do it all winter long. Like we are sucking our stomach in because we don't want to feel fat. And when we're doing that, we're just limiting how we can breathe. Cyclists definitely have to think about this. Your posture on the bike, if that pelvis rotates back and we crouch, we are just shortening our torso and we're not allowing our lungs to actually fill up. You would never run crunched over. You get tired running, or when you're just running, it's all about shoulders back, chest up. Like We want to expand this as much as we can so that diaphragm can rise and fall and get an actual full proper breath. All right, so cycling, super important. Same thing with swimming too. All right, so the last one that we're going to do is cadence. All right, and this one is a little bit of a mixture of both, or you can put all of them together. But what you're really worried about here with this one is just the timing. And what we're working on here is getting that 10 breaths or 6 breaths per minute. So we're doing a 10-second breath essentially. So what we're going to do, and I'll count you guys through this one, is you're going to breathe through your nose. You're going to take your inhale in for 4 seconds. So we're just going to count in 3, 2, 1, and then you're going to exhale through your nose. So it's going to be out, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's going to be just that repetition over and over and over. Okay. If you have a low boat score, if your boat score was below 15, this is going to be really tough. All right. Typically, if it was below 15, you might modify this to being more like 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out, just so it's a little bit more tolerable. But we don't want to expose everyone's bolt scores, and I think you guys are all pretty strong. So we're gonna do the 4 and 6. All right, we're gonna shoot for it. Again, if it feels like it's too much, you're feeling like, oh my god, I get it, I got to get another breath. Just breathe normally for 10 or 15 seconds, and then just join back in. Okay, we're not worried about how light we're breathing. All right, so this doesn't have to be a light breath in. This is not like that first exercise we did. You can take some air in. Okay, it should be quiet. You know, we don't want to take this big, huge breath in, but it doesn't have to be super soft. All right. We're all feeling pretty good. All right. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to do a nice, easy breath in through the nose. We're going to, ready? In, 1, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just go ahead and relax the easy breathing. Right. And some of us wanted to take that deep breath in once we finished, right? Like you start to get that hunger there. And that's just working on air hunger, that tolerance to CO2, but that pacing is really working on our autonomic nervous system. Just trying to regulate that a little bit, letting them work in tandem a little bit better with one another. Another exercise that you would do is combine these 3. Can you do that with good biomechanics, taking that deep breath in, paying attention to your lungs, your ribs expanding and contracting? And can you do it softly? Can you start taking in a little bit lighter of a breath in and out? Right? So that's the purpose behind some of these breath work, right? And these are just essentially 4 easy exercises to start right away. It doesn't matter if your bolt score is 40 or not. These are going to be beneficial. Because essentially what we're working on is these 3 major things, right? Your biochemical, we're working on increasing that tolerance to the CO2. That's our number 1 goal amongst everything else that we also get, the nitric oxide, the bicarbonate, the EPO, all that stuff is great. Love it, right? HRV, love it, right? The biomechanical is just letting us understand that breathing is not a subconscious activity like we think it is, right? Yes, breathing will happen, but how we breathe is very conscious. You have to think about it, and you have to think about it day to day if you expect to do it when performing an activity, right? Because it's not the time to work on it then, right? We study to show up and perform at the test. Every single day we breathe, we take it, we practice it. So that way, when the shit hits the fan, I do it properly. So biomechanics. And then the cadence is really about getting our system back into check, right? Getting these systems to work well together. We do not want to be permanently in our sympathetic nervous system. I don't want to be on edge, fight or flight all the time. And I certainly don't want to be in parasympathetic all the time either. So it's not just about getting a higher HRV. It's not a goal. It's getting these two systems to work well to one another. We need time in both every single day. We need to be excited and we need to be relaxed every single day throughout the day. Okay. So bottom line is you guys got to start breathing. All right. I mean, we're working on our cardiovascular system 12 to 15 hours a week. Some of us more, right? Some of us a little less. And if we're going to work on our cardiovascular system, that is breathing. We're challenging it during our workout for that hour or 2 hours a day. We can continue to challenge it without pounding the crap out of our body for another 20 hours a day, right? The reason we can only train as much as we train is because of the pounding on our body. Our muscles our muscular and skeletal system need time to recover, or we end up with stress fractures or tendonitis, or our muscles are just so sore I can't perform anyway. But what we're doing during those workouts is we're trying to tax the cardiovascular system. I can get the same benefits or similar benefits that I get from a VO2 max workout through breathing exercises. Because in that VO2 max workout, how am I taxing the cardiovascular system? Forget about the muscle, forget about neurological, just the cardiovascular system. I'm increasing my carbon dioxide. And I'm teaching my body how to deal with that increase in carbon dioxide. We just did that 4 minutes ago without using your legs, arms, or body. So if you're hurt, if you're sore, if you're tired, if you had a long training day, like this is something you could do to maintain your cardiovascular system. Yes, it's not going to maintain your muscular system or your skeletal system, right? Those things are still going to be issues if you're injured and coming back from an injury, but your cardiovascular system can be primed. And we can actually get more benefit the same way that you would do sprint intervals, right? This whole series goes into doing what they refer to as simulating altitude. I hate that term because you can't simulate altitude, right? I can't take oxygen out of the air. But what you can do and what these exercises aim to do ultimately is increase that carbon dioxide and lower your blood saturation. So ultimately where this goes down the road is doing workouts while holding your breath, doing repeated sprints. So going through a breath series, right? And then holding your breath and literally sprinting for 30 seconds. And then stopping, taking super short breaths, and then maybe sprinting again. And the whole idea here is to get that blood oxygen level to go down and down and down. So your body's dealing with performing with, right? Because what happens when our blood oxygen goes down? When my blood oxygen level goes down, that means my hemoglobin, most red blood cells are releasing the hemoglobin. They're actually releasing the oxygen and my body's actually using that oxygen, right? So that means my blood saturation is lower because my body is actually using it. When your blood saturation is high, that's just extra oxygen sitting in your system that you're not even using. You're just getting rid of it at some point in time. So these are baby steps. You got to start here with just the introductory of carbon dioxide and tolerance to that. You got to work on your biomechanics, work on the pacing, and then it just continues and continues and continues. All right. But this is stuff you can do simply while you're warming up, working out, going for a jog, doing your warm up or yoga in the morning. Just keep your mouth shut. Just tape it. We'll send the myo tape out, whatever it is, literally slap it on. Right. And just see what it's like. So essentially, how does this, what's going on now? What am I doing with all this stuff? Obviously, you guys can tell I'm excited about it, right? This has literally been about 2 years in the making for me of just kind of reading into this and going and going and going. And I think it's important. And I wouldn't be pumping this out if I didn't think it was important and that didn't have an actual impact on our performance as athletes. It's particularly endurance athletes, but even more so just from a health perspective, like how this impacts and the positive benefits that you get from just being mindful about how you breathe and what it can do for stress, anxiety, sleep apnea, like all these conditions, so many conditions can actually be controlled and cured for the most part just through proper breathing techniques. If we didn't live in this world of hyperventilation of us guys trying to look skinny at the beach, holding our stomachs in, and just all the talking that we do and hyperventilating on a regular basis, like a lot of ailments could be not an issue. All right. Even decongesting your nose. It's springtime. We're all there. Hold your breath for 30 seconds. Literally, next time your nose is congested, in and out through your nose. If you can't breathe in and out through your nose, just purse your lips, breathe through the corner of your mouth, pinch your nose, hold it for 30 seconds, and just rock back and forth, move around a little bit, and then breathe again. Okay. Just breathe through your nose, force it. It'll work. You might have to repeat it a couple times. All right. But ultimately, what's happening here, guys, is I'm doing a program, right? Like this is something I feel passionate about that I think people should be doing. So the way it kind of works, the way I'm putting this out there is introductory 4-month program, right? And then after that, you can kind of go to a month period, but basically doing a 4-month period, $500, just like I would with the training programs, you get daily. Like today, Monday, what are the exercises you should be doing based on your Bolt score of where you are in this progression? Tuesday, what are you doing? Wednesday, what are you doing? Thursday, so forth and so on, all the way through. Every 4 weeks, you should test your Bolt score every week, but every 4 weeks we reassess and then refigure out the program. What's the next step? Some people are going to be quicker responders than others. Someone might go from a score of 15 to 25 in 4 weeks. All right. Or you might be like me. I could be 4 months in and only be 5 or 6 points up. Right. It's going to differ for every single person. So like there's no blanket program. So there's a link to the stuff if somebody wants to be like, hey, I don't want to wait. I want to start this thing tomorrow. I think Sarah's going to pop a couple links into the email if you want to do it or into the chat. I'm going to send an email out tomorrow. I definitely check it out. And I also would love your feedback on just what happened tonight. This is the first time I presented this. So I'd love feedback. Was it chaotic? Was it thorough? Was it scattered? All that stuff, like anything you think, send it my way. Because I just want this to be better, right? This is information that needs to be out to everybody. Everybody should be doing this. Okay. So questions and answers, man. Let's throw it out there. What do we got?
Brian, did you say earlier that you actually try to do this, obviously not on the big climbs, but you think that even during a race, breathing through your nose is creates better output, better like speed or power?
To a point. So what the studies show is that you can do up to 85%, right? So that would be, thinking for you, Amar, that's probably like somewhere around your 10K to half marathon pace, right? So a half marathon, you should be able to breathe through your nose the whole time. Now, could you do that today? No, absolutely not. There's no way, right? You're not used to it. But if you train breathing through your nose on your, zone 2 run, you could do it, right? You can get out there in zone 2 and kind of cruise and breathe through your nose, no problem. So if you constantly practice that and keep going a little faster through the nose, right? And keep pushing that a little bit, then yeah, sooner or later you can get up to 85%. So just about 10K to half pace. I can tell you that during races, I get to a top of a hill like cat's paw or something during a race and we're all out effort. I'm definitely breathing through my mouth. But once we crest that, I immediately start breathing through my nose. And I immediately see my heart rate drop. I still feel out of breath, but I see my heart rate plummet and recover. And once that heart rate starts going down, your respiratory is going to start to go down too. Remember, breathing through the nose is going to bring more volume into there and hold it longer for more absorption. So it's not a matter of how quickly you can get oxygen in and out. It's how much you can get in and keep it. And once you kind of make that mental switch, you'll stop panicking. And when you stop panicking, you stop panting. All right. And Don, you had a question. I saw something in there, but the chat, but I didn't see it.
I know you don't want to make any medical claims, but does this help with asthma? I'm assuming it does.
Yes, it does. It certainly can.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's that sense of breathlessness. We won't get into all the details, but yeah, I can definitely send you stuff on it. So if you have asthma, definitely. And same thing with like those breathe right strips. Those are huge. Those are great. Like use those. It's just going to help open up that airway and help clear it a little bit to come through. All right. What else? What else we got? Oh, Ronnie, I see a little sticky hand up there. I've never done these Zoom things before like this.
That was amazing session. I have a question about when I'm swimming, because I like to swim. Doing the as fast as you can swim without taking a breath. Is that a proper exercise for something like this? And kind of going from one end of the pool to the next, and then seeing if you can turn around and come back.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's awesome. It's
Okay.
amazing. Like that is essentially what we end up doing, even with running or cycling. Like it just feels weird doing it running and cycling and these other sports,
Right.
right? That like I'm going on a hard effort. Why would I hold my breath for 15 or 20 paces, right? But if you think about swimming, most of us probably don't have the best swim rate, right? But let's say we do one stroke per second, right? One arm pass per second, right? So 60 RPM, and you're taking 3 strokes per breath. That means you're pausing, you're holding your breath 3 seconds, right? 3 seconds. And the real key with breathing is, what do we tell people? When you go to take your breath, it's not about breathing in, it's about breathing out. It's about the exhale, right? It's about a small bite in, because what you're doing, you're holding your breath. So you're pulling carbon dioxide in there. So it's about releasing that carbon dioxide and taking a small snippet of air. Why? Because I don't need more air in my system. My blood oxygen level is at 97. That tank is full. Like we're good. We're not dying for that. What we're looking at doing when we're swimming, we get that kind of burn. We're just like, oh, I got to get this carbon dioxide out. It's great. And that's why I am a better runner and cyclist when I am swimming. But I just hate getting to the freaking pool. So I don't do it. So now I just hold my breath when I'm doing a VO2 max effort or something.
And one more question. Sorry, Chris. What did you say is the biological reason that the nose breathing improves everything? Is it what did you say at the very beginning? I didn't catch that.
So the real reason that the nose is key, number one, that's why we have a nose. Our mouth is for eating. That's why we have a mouth, is to eat. Our nose is for breathing. Your nose does 30 different functions. Way too many for me to name. The major ones is warming the air. The number one is actually restricting airflow. It's harder to breathe through your nose. And when it's harder to breathe through your nose, you automatically take a deeper breath. This is why when we were wearing masks during COVID and everyone's like, oh, I can't freaking breathe. Everyone felt that air hunger constantly. It's because you were now being restricted. It was harder to breathe through it. So you had to breathe through your diaphragm. And how does everybody in the world breathe? Through their chest. So they can't do it and they got to take it off and they're like dying here, right? So the main reasons is to get a deep breath, to release the nitric oxide, which is probably the most important thing for us as endurance athletes, as a vasodilator, instead of drinking your beet juice, or do both. But those are really the key ones. And also for immunity purposes, like for like to filter out COVID and stuff of that nature. Right? It's a cleaning. That's why we have those hairs in there. What's up, Chris?
As part of the program, do you, or does the program involve activities while we work out?
Yes, at some point. Right. So all this stuff should, like everything, walk before you run. So all these exercises, depending on where you are in that Bolt scale, right? But basically you got to kind of start easy, start building that tolerance. And then it goes to walking, to jogging, to running, to sprinting. And whatever sport it is you're doing, whether it's on the bike or running, you can mix these things in. So the great thing about breath work is, it's a little different from meditation, can be as beneficial, but it's different in meditation. And meditation usually needs to be done still. Walking meditation is obviously there, right? But you're not working out and meditating at the same time. Breath work can be done while doing anything, at work, cooking dinner, riding your bike, running, anything like that. This stuff can all be mixed in. That's what's great about it. Who else? What do we got? What do we got? I feel like it's Hollywood Squares when I'm on Zoom. I'm like, right corner, right top corner. What do you got? But people move around. Anything else? What do we think? Feeling pretty good? Awesome. Listen, along with that, I've set up a Calendly, whatever it's called, that little link where you can see, like, you can book time. So I set one up for the next couple of weeks, like on Tuesdays and Thursdays, like half-hour chunks. So anyone that wants to kind of just talk more about this or has questions, just hit the link. I think Sarah put it into the chat as well. She's such a good assistant. There's no way I could do that while doing this. Just, book a time, book a half-hour slot. Let's just talk. All right. Because the more questions I get from you, if I don't know the answer, I love that. Because that means I have to go find it, right? That's a question I didn't think about asking, and there is an answer. So the more questions I get, the more times I have this conversation with different people, the better I get at all this and the better understanding I have of how all this works. And to me, that's the most important thing, because a little bit of this is about selfish, right? I'm trying to benefit myself as an athlete, as well as just general health and living better. So this is a selfish endeavor for sure. I can't help but try to get it out there. Like, why wouldn't I want my friends and everybody else to get better and understand this as well? All right. So we'll leave it at that. It was awesome to see everybody. Thank everybody for showing up for me, right? Like, you guys didn't really have to do this, and I'm glad you did. It makes it way easier than Sarah just listening to me. So I definitely appreciate all this, guys. Thank you so much. I'll send an email out tomorrow just as a reminder of all this stuff. If you guys have any questions, obviously you can all reach out to me or set up a time to talk. Let's get this done.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
That was
Good to
great.
see everybody.
Brian.
Okay.